All praises to the Most High Yahweh, by Shem Yahweh Shai. Shalom to my Hebrew brothers and sisters. It is once again we are joined together, I tell you, via live stream, the internet, and we want to be able to bring forth this message, even if it's, for a few minutes. I did not want this high holy feast day of the Feast of Purim to pass me by, because it is definitely one of the most significant high holy days, as all of the high holy days of the Lord is. It's definitely important to definitely recognize and get into scriptures. Yesterday we talked about the overthrow of the ungracious Nicanor, of course, and that was significant to the Hebrew Israelites, our heritage, and what Judas Maccabees and all of the Maccabees, of course, had done in preserving the purification of the temple and fighting many battles on the behalf of the Israelites. And so we get to the book of Esther, which is very prominent story in the Bible. It doesn't have a lot of chapters in it, but we want to be able to touch on some of it because the Most High used Queen Esther's life, of course, to be an example in such a time as this, of course, as the scripture says, throughout her reign as queen. And she's from the tribe of Benjamin. Just give a little history of it, of course. And, everything that happened was in the province of Shushan, okay? Shushan, if you want to pronounce it that way. But very, very interesting story, especially in the beginning as it relates to Queen Vashti, whom, we don't really know all of the details behind Queen Vashti refusing to do what her husband asked her to do in showing off her beauty. That could have been something else more than what we know, why he wanted her to show off her beauty in front of other men. So we have to give attention to that as well as wives. This is a story that we can gain some wisdom and understanding as wives. Now, again, as let's go ahead and start reading, because I'm not going to read all of it, but we want to get and pull out the most key points so we can have some understanding. Now, the book of Esther, chapter 1, it says, "Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces." Okay, he was a mighty king that reigned. That in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the noble and princes of the provinces being before him. So, he had a feast or party, to celebrate his reign or who he is and all that kind of stuff. And so, there were many people that were invited, many noble people. Let's look at verse 4. "When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 104 days." Okay, so that was a long feast. Okay, verse 5. "And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace." Okay, so he made a feast for his noble, prominent people, men, okay, for that reason, and show off his glorious kingdom. Then he made one, of course, a feast unto all the people that were present in the Shushan palace, both great and small people, for 7 days. For 7 days he did that in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Now we go on to verse 6 says, "Where were white, green, and blue hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The bed were of gold and silver upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black and marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold. So they were really like, this was an elegant party. The vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. Yeah, like the state of the king, of how he felt, how he wanted to just really just be lavish and go all out for his party. It says, or banquet, let's just say banquet, verse 8. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. Okay, so no one had to be compelled or make them drink. They could drink according, to their pleasure. So it says, let's read it again, verse 8. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Every man's pleasure, right. Verse 9. Also Vashti, the queen, made a feast for women in the royal house which belonged it to King Ahasuerus. So she had her own thing going on. Her husband allowed her to have her own banquet in her own house, okay? Her royal house at that. Verse 10. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbana, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbaniah, Bitha, Salakia, and Abiatha, or Bagatha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal. Bring her out with the crown royal on her head to show the people and the prince her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. Okay, now we got to really stop here and just try to understand exactly what King Ahasuerus was doing in wanting Vashti to come and show off her beauty. Now, we're going to see through the story, all things are lawful but not expedient, first of all. Now you have a king here who's drunk, first of all. He's asking his wife to come and show off her beauty. All right. But the Bible, look what it says here in verse 10. On the 7th day, when the let's look at it again, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, see, he commanded all of his chamberlains that they will bring Queen Vashti, okay, the king, with the crown royal. Bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal to show the people and the prince her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlain. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned within him. Okay, so we have to remember, in every story, the Most High is involved. The Most High is involved in every story of our lives, in every situation. Scripture says there's nothing new under the sun. So we will want to think, okay, what happened here? What happened here that Vashti, Queen Vashti, did not want to honor her husband's request for her to come and show off her beauty to the people? Maybe they have been doing it, of course, every year that he has his party or whatever, his banquet. And she just got tired of it. Maybe he was so intoxicated and his heart was merry that maybe she felt like he was going to embarrass her. Or, when you're drunk, you're not really, aware or have this ability to be cognitive of what you're saying and what you're doing. So something is going on here. So we think a little bit deeply, if we think deeply spiritually, we could think like maybe this was her time to just, the Most High ordained for her to be out the way. We don't know. It doesn't say whether she was an Israelite, but we know Queen Esther was. She was from the tribe of Benjamin. So it doesn't say whether Vashti was an Israelite, right? And even if she was, okay, well, maybe the Most High needed somebody to take over as queen with more courage and confidence and power. Maybe he chose, we know he definitely chose Esther for a reason. Now, getting back to Queen Vashti not wanting to come and show off her beauty, they made a big deal out of it. We're going to read it where they felt like, they want to teach all the women's a lesson that, you obey your husband no matter what he tells you to do. But we also got to really examine the reasons why Vashti did not adhere to her husband's command for her to come and show her beauty. The Most High is in all of that. It doesn't say nothing happened to her afterwards. She probably was glad that she was, removed from being his queen. We just don't know, for the purpose of what the Most High was getting ready to do in establishing this high holy feast day Purim when Esther became queen, when she became queen, to do what the Most High called her to do. So it doesn't have anything to do with anything negative on Queen Vashti's behalf. She could have just been doing exactly what the Most High told her to do. Okay? And maybe that opened up the king's eye to see, look, you were drunk. You wanted your wife. Now the Most High might have gave him a second chance. Okay, now you can find a new wife, virgin or whatever, and because it's going to be for a greater purpose than what he thought. See, life with the Most High is more than just showing off your wife's beauty. You see that? Life in the Most High is more than having a banquet. It's more than getting drunk and wanting your wife to come and parade her beauty. See, women have dignity. They're women, all of us, women that have fear of the Lord, and even some women that don't fear the Lord. There's just certain things you're not going to do. You don't feel that you want to do. You don't want to be degraded. You don't want to do certain things, and it doesn't matter who's telling you to do it. If it's not in your spirit, she could have felt herself being degraded. She didn't want people looking at her to show off her beauty so they can lust off her other men. We got to really, really think about these things of, and stop looking at it one side. Now, yes, they technically dethroned her. They technically dethroned Queen Vashti from being queen and wrote some notes to warn all other women in the Shushan palace. But what does that mean? Let's keep reading. Now, verse 11 says, okay, let's look at verse 12. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, meaning angry, and his anger burned in him. All right, folks, so that let us know you got anger problems. You burning with anger? Okay. Verse 13. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times. See, the wise men knew the times. Must be was Issachar. He said, for so the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. Okay. Let's look at verse 13 again. Then the king said to the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. Verse 14. And the next unto him was Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Micucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which set the first king, which sat the first in the kingdom. Okay, so it wasn't Issachar, but I know that Issachar knows the times and the season, so let me just say that. Now, verse 15. What shall we do? So all of these were his wise men. I guess he consult to make the right decisions, counselors or whatever. So verse 15 says, what shall we do unto Queen Vashti according to the law? See? Because she have not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. So they say, what are we going to do with her? She just really openly defied the king. So we got to do something about that, because they were afraid that the other wives will see that and be rebellious, as they thought Queen Vesti was. But let's examine that. Do you feel that Queen Vesti was rebellious because she didn't want to come and show off her beauty to men? Now, we don't, what we don't even know the laws and the customs of these heathens. King Ahasuerus, we got to examine these things, because they were not Israelites. So these were the customs of the heathen. Now, when you get to Queen Esther, that is an Israelite, she really just basically definitely played it in wisdom. That's why her cousin Mordecai, I always thought it was her uncle, but her cousin Mordecai was telling her, look, don't make your nationality known unto these people, unto the king. So there was a bit of wisdom in there, right? So let's keep reading, though. Let's keep reading, because they're trying to figure out what to do with Queen Vashti, because she didn't adhere to the king's command when he told her to come. So we go a little further, and it says, and Mimican answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen have not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in the province of King Ahasuerus. So he was like, yeah, she's like a bad reflection on all of us, basically, technically, okay? Now it says, for this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, and when it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in unto him, but she came not. Verse 18, likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princess which have heard of the deed of the queen. Thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. So they was like, we got to do something about this, because Queen Vashti has made a reproach upon all of the women, all of the kings. We got to set an example that the women among us will never have a thought to do something like this. So basically they were making an example out of Queen Vashti. Like, doesn't matter what your husband tell you to do, that you do exactly what he tell you to do, no matter what. Now, that goes to the New Testament, where the scriptures tells wives to obey your husband in all things. Now, if you understand that scripture is not telling you to obey your husband and jump off a bridge if he tell you to. It's not telling you to obey your husband if he's telling you to break the laws and the statutes and the commandments of the Most High. That is not what that scripture is telling us. Okay? So you have to be wise in understanding the different verses of the scriptures that correlate with each other, precept upon precept, as they say, line upon line. Of course, we know that. You're going to have to understand, what is it? Is what your husband telling you a part of the laws and statutes of commandment? Are you going to obey the Most High, or are you going to obey your husband is telling you to do something wrong? So that is the difference that I'm trying to help us to get to understand. Vashti may not have made a bad decision, but divinely, the Most High was getting ready to basically pass the baton, or transfer the power, or what is the word I want to use? I just can't get it, but it's like changing of the mantle, the changing of the guards, per se, And it could be all orchestrated by the Most High, that this had to happen. He probably put it in Queen Vashti's spirit not to come, because he had a greater purpose that he was getting ready to do, rather than showing off beauty, rather than drinking and having a banquet. He was getting ready to save the whole nation of Israel from being annihilated. Okay? So this is what the Most High had to do in order to get it done. So Salakia, a lot of our nation don't really consider the bigger picture in what the Most High was doing to prepare to save the whole nation of Israel. They don't consider that. They're just looking at, she disobeyed her husband. Okay, well, the Most High is greater than that. He's greater than people just want to show off their beauty and get drunk. All right, let's keep reading. Okay, verse 19. It says here, If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and of the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give a royal estate unto another that is better than she. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Verse 20. And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both great and small. So the men had a fear. The husbands had a fear that Queen Vashti attitude and not coming when her husband called her to show off her beauty. And, some commentaries just thought that that she was naked. I mean, this is just some commentators thinking that. We don't know. So, of course, if it was that, if you're just basically in your royal apparel and you just walking through, it seemed like, okay, let me get this over with, But it could have been that she was naked. We don't know. I don't know where the commentators got that from. And don't say that I'm, suggesting anything like that. But, hey, if somebody refused to come to their king in this situation, it perhaps hypothetically could have been that she didn't want to degrade herself anymore for the king, especially because he was drunk, as I said earlier. Now, verse 21, and the same pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. All right, verse 22. For he sent letters unto all the king's provinces, into every provinces according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. So they wanted to reach people far and near, with what they were saying, to make sure that all of the women would never ever disrespect their husband as far as they believed that Vashti had did, So they made that royal decree, all right? Now, so it says a new queen is sought, right? So it says chapter 2, verse 1, after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti. Why did he remember Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her? Then said the king's servant that ministered unto him, let there be fair young virgins sought for the king. So it sounded like he felt a little bad about Vashti. If you're drunk and you're trying to decree something upon somebody that's not right, and then when you're finished with your drunken state and you come back to, then you realize that you really have done something wrong. You have not done right by your wife or whomever, is in your life. So, and it could be vice versa, of course. If you're in a drunken state and you realize that you might have was too harsh, you shouldn't have done that. So that's why the Bible says he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Sound like he have a little remorse there. All right. Now verse 3 says, and let the king appoint officers in the provinces of his kingdom, that there may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan, and the palace to the house of the women unto the custody of Hegis, the king chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. Now we're just going to commentate really quickly to get over to the main point of what's going to happen as far as after Queen Esther was chosen. You know the story. You have to continue to read it. Read chapter 2, of course, is going to find out that she was chosen. Okay, let's get to. All right, so let's get to verse 17, chapter 2, because right now it's telling you after all the purification and Mordecai is her cousin. You can see his name in there, of course. He's, making preparations for her, telling her what to do, because, see, these people were Israelites. And when you're Israelites, there's a purpose upon your life. Mordecai, the spirit was upon him to have Esther to go and, basically like a pageant, a pageant race, a pageant contest, basically what it was in the normal world terminology. So he was with her trying to find out she's doing the right thing. He convinced her to do that because it was a greater purpose that he was being pushed in the spirit to do this. You see that? All right. So as she got in there, let's back up a little bit. Okay, let's go to verse 5. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away, okay? He brought up Hadassah. That's what Esther's name really is, Hadassah. That is Esther, his uncle's daughter. You see that? For she had neither father or mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So he was raising her basically, okay? So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. So now Mordecai he's in the flow of the spirit. Let's see why and what provoked him to get Esther into this. It's a greater purpose than what we ever can imagine as our lives are going on. You don't know the place that you in. It's a greater purpose right there. If the Most High put you somewhere, there is purpose in that place. So it says, and the maiden pleased him. All right. And she appointed Salakia, and she obtained kindness of him. Okay. Kindness of the person that's going to choose her. All right. To be the king's, audition rather, to be the king's wife. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meet to be given her out of the king's house. Okay, this is Haggai getting her prepared, giving her all the things she need, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. She didn't tell them she was a Jew. She didn't tell them she was a Hebrew Israelite. Okay? And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women house to know how Esther did become of her. See, Mordecai probably already knew that, the Jews has always been persecuted, as I said on the broadcast yesterday. Our nation has always been persecuted. So Mordecai was a wise man of the Lord. He was a very humble man as well, too, but very strong, because we know the scripture where he did not bow down to Haman, give nobody, pay homage to no man. So, but he probably was already very aware that there could be decrees. He knew Haman was in there because Haman was an Agagite. The Agagite, they were like Edomites. So they were already cruel people that were always trying to do harm to the Israelites, to the Jews. So Mordecai, the Spirit probably already showed him insight that if Esther could just get in there, she could be of some influence for the nation of Israel. Okay, our nation. And that's who we are. So-called black people, we are Israelites, the Jews. So Esther was getting prepared for her destiny, probably without her really knowing it. But that's why Mordecai told her, not right now. Don't show your people nor your kindred or who you are. So we don't know the details of her complexion, whether she was a really dark skin or medium skin, or had a little bit of breaded skin, like a cake unturned rather. because she was able to get in there. She got in there. Maybe the king didn't care about the skin, the color of the skin, of course. It was just the personality of the woman that he would choose, and the outer external beauty and the attitude and the spirit of her heart that mattered to him. Now it said, and Mordecai, like we read, he walked every day before the women's court to know how Esther did and what should become of her. All right. Now let's skip a little further over because this will take a lot of time. Let's go to verse 17. Now, actually, let's go a little further up. Okay. Okay. So it says, verse 16, so Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal, in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Okay. And the king loved Esther. He loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. So he found him another wife, another queen. Okay. So right here we got to understand that destiny is unfolding. Destiny is unfolding in these scriptures with King Ahasuerus, making Queen Esther his wife. Okay, verse 18 said, then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. So they had a celebration, another big banquet to celebrate that he found another queen. Now let's look at verse 21. Esther chapter 2, verse 21. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, he always sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigvan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth. They were wroth, Salakia, and sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. So, King Ahasuerus. So, let's look at verse 22. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it to Esther, the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name, her cousin's name. All right. And when the inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. So they wrote it in the book of the Chronicles before the king. And later on, as we might not get to that part, but it came back up to the king. He remembered Mordecai, and it just turned out to be good. Now, chapter 3 says, after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha. All right. Hammedatha. Now, we're going to see that Haman he's an Agagite. And again, the Agagites are the remnants of Edomites. And advance him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. So sometimes kings are not wise, because Haman was a very wicked, evil man, and he had a plan in his heart to annihilate the Jews. Okay. But it's going to be known, and this is why this is the sole purpose and reason why Queen Esther was even raised up to be the king's wife. So that's why I said it's more than having a banquet and celebrating a feast. Now, and I'm just going to, you can read chapter 3, because in this chapter, Haman's plot to kill all the Jews. You see, verse 4. Esther chapter 3, verse 4, now it came to pass when they spoke daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. See, anytime you make known that you a Jew, our nation, Hebrew Israelite Jews, they don't like that. Now let's back up and go to still in Esther chapter 3.
Let's go to verse 2. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. See? Mordecai is a real Jew. He's a Hebrew Israelite. You're not bound to no man. You see? You don't care who you are. You can't do it. Then the king's servant, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, why transgresseth thou the king's commandment? No, we are not bowing down to a man. So they trying to say the commandment of who? The king's commandment? No, no one is above the Most High. So let's go a little further down. All right. Verse 5. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then Haman was full of wrath, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. See, this is why the Most High had to get Esther in the Shushan palace. Shushan palace. You see that? See? Let's read verse 4. Go back up to verse 4. Now it came to pass when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not to them, that they told Haman. See, so these other men told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. Now you understand why our nation, Hebrew Israelites, so-called black people, of course, and the 12 tribes of Israel, all of them, while we hate it so much, every time people realize that we are Jew, they want to really kind of just do us in. You know, they don't like that we are the chosen people of the Most High. Now, let's go a little further. So we go down to verse 8, where Haman is talking to the king, trying to go ahead and plan his attack with the king. He's going to King Ahasuerus and said that there is, let's read it, verse 8. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, we in Esther chapter 3, verse 8, there is a certain people scattered abroad, and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom. And their laws are diverse from all people. Yeah, because we keep the law, statutes, and commandments. It says, neither keep they the king's law. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. It's not for the king's profit to suffer to let them live. That's what he's saying. So, you know, this king right now don't have a lot of wisdom. He's going to listen to Haman shortly, for a little while at least. Verse 9. Haman said, if it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasury. So he's just offering the king's money. He'll donate 10,000, you know, all this talent of money, silver, to have this done. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. See? The Jews' enemy. Scriptures are letting us know that the Agagites, which is the extension, the lineage of the Edomites, are the Jews' enemies. Okay? It's always been like that. Can't get around it. You do your research, you'll find that the Agagites' lineage and progeny comes from the Edomites. All right? Let's go a little further here. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also. Do with them as it seemed good to thee. Now, he don't know that he's married to a Jew yet, King Ahasuerus. He don't know that Esther, Queen Esther, is a Jew. So this is why the Most High allowed Esther to get in there so that she can save her people. It's always like that. He will raise up somebody and get in there and overthrow what the enemy is trying to plan to do to his people, the Israelites, you know, our nation, Jacob. We are Jacob, you know. Jacob's trouble is we're always going through it. We're always going through it as a people. Now, all right, let's go a little further down here. All right, so you look in verse 12, King Ahasuerus, was it written and sealed it with his ring. It was like the scepter. giving authority to whomever he will, sticking out his scepter with the ring, of course, to validate what he just agreed upon. And verse 13 says, and the letters were sent by post unto all the king provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. You know, and that's why we're celebrating the Feast of Purim in the month of Adar. You know, that is what this month is. You know, from now until like the beginning of April, something, you know, many of the Hebrew Israelites may be celebrating on another day, another week. But this is the month of Adar that we're celebrating and commemorating the deliverance of us. It says, and to take spoil of them for a prey. So they really just want to annihilate us, annihilate our people. Okay. And verse 14 says, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be in every province was published unto all the people, that they should be ready against that day. Yeah, fight the Jews, kill the Jews, you know. That's what they're doing to us. Take our heritage, take our name, wipe them out. Psalms 83, that the name of Israel will be no more. Now, verse 15 said, the post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace, and the king and Haman sat down to drink. But the city of Shushan was perplexed, because it was mostly filled with Jews, of course. And they were perplexed about the news that they just got, you know. Now, chapter 4, verse 1, when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out in the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. Why? Because he loved it, Israel. He loved it, his people. And that is the heart that we're supposed to have for one another. We're supposed to love our people, even though they're difficult to love sometimes because of what they do, how they are. We got to have compassion and love our people. Now it says in verse 2, and it came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. But he put on sackcloth that day and was at the gate. He didn't care. And in every provinces whatsoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Because you got people that has been given power and authority to annihilate the Jews. Verse 4, so Esther's maid and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she rent raiment. Salakia. She sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. He didn't want no royal apparel. He didn't want to look nice and fancy on a day that there's a decree to annihilate his nation. You know? That is how we should feel today. Many of our nation are being, gunned down by police brutality. Our nation, black people, so-called black people, that's who we are. We're Judah. We're the Jews of the Bible. We're the real Jews of the Bible. We're Israelites. We're the one that's always persecuted among the enemies, the haters of Israel. We don't want to always be in royal apparel. We cry behind the scenes. We always trying to, pray and find a way, so many people in the voices trying to speak up in the Senate and the state, the congressmen and all of that, but I don't even know if they know we're really Israel. Some of them probably do. But we're fighting. That's why you have the Israelite men on the street corners, the sisters, everyone is praying. We using our voices to uplift so we can outnumber our enemies, come together. And that is what happened here. Look what it says, and weeping and wailing, and many lay in the sackcloth and ashes. Okay, so let's go a little further. Verse 5, then called Esther for Hatash, one of the king's chamberlain, who had been appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. You see that? Why it was. So Hattash went forth to Mordecai unto the streets of the city, which were before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay the king's treasury for the Jews to destroy them. So basically, you could think about it. Haman had, Mordecai had insight. How did he know about what it decree went? I guess it was in the writing. That in the king's treasury to pay to kill the Jews, to destroy them. Verse 8, also he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther. He was given one, so they say show it to Esther, and declare it unto her, to change, to charge her that she should go in unto the king, and to make supplication unto him, and to make requests before him for her people. All right, this is what the destiny is about right here. He ordered the servant right here to go to Esther and to declare it unto her and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplications unto him and to make requests before him for her people. Yeah. Risk your life. Risk your life. Risk your life and go before the king and try to help your people. And Hadash came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again, Esther spoke unto Hadash and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. Verse 11, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death. Basically, if you go before the king without him calling you, you will be put to death. One law, no exceptions. It said, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to him and called in unto the king these 30 days. So she was like, I haven't been called to the king these 30 days. I don't really know when he's going to call me. If I go before the king right now, I will be killed. So he said here in verse 12, and they told to Mordecai Esther words. But look what Mordecai told Esther. Straight up front, this is what it is. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther. He told her, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. So don't think just because you in the king's house and you his wife and your people out here about to get killed, you having banquets with the king, you up around all them heathens thinking you doing something because you got a little bit of money and this, that, and the other. Don't think that because you doing good in the king's palace of the Shushan palace. Look what he says. That you doing good more than all of the Jews. Verse 14. For if thou altogether holdeth thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Who knows? Who knows whether the Lord raised you up for such a time as this? For you to be the voice, you in the palace, you married to the king that have the power and the influence to change his mind and come up with another decree that the Jews can be saved from being exterminated and annihilated from off the face of the earth by these heathens. Now, the courage of Esther. Now we go a little further. Verse 15, then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat or drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise. And so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. But I'm going to see the king. This is the paramount of the book of Esther. If I perish, I perish. And that is the attitude, the spirit we as Israelites, Hebrew Israelites, the Jews of the Bible, we should have. If I perish, I perish. But I'm going to do what the king says. I'm going to see the king. If the Most High tells us to do something, that is what we have to do to save our people. You know, and I'm going to say this before I go into chapter 5, because we're hastening along. We're racing it along, but we're going to go into hasten into chapter 6, and then the last chapter is chapter 8, of course. So we go a little further here. See, what I wanted to say is that even, coming out and declaring that you are Hebrew Israelite, has some repercussions as far as other heathens and people. But when you know you're called and the Lord has told you to do something, then that is what you do. Now, let's go a little further here. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded. Now, we're going to skip on over now because if you read chapter 5, you're going to see that King Ahasuerus, of course, let's go a little further here. Let's go a little bit up. So Esther had a banquet. He allowed Esther to have a banquet in chapter 5, and she wanted Haman to come because it's just going to be some things in the scriptures where, it's just going to turn bad for Haman. Okay, it's going to turn bad for Haman. And verse 12 of chapter 5, Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself. And tomorrow I am invited also with the king. So he thought that, something was good going on for him because he was invited by the Queen Esther to the banquet. But everything was being set up by the Most High to overthrow Haman. Okay? To overthrow him. Now, I want to get to the part in chapter 6 where it says, on that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. Now, in this chapter, you can read this on your own as well. It's going to talk about how King Ahasuerus, couldn't sleep, and the books of the Chronicles of the good acts, what people done, was brought to him, and he saw Mordecai, Queen Esther's cousin's name, in there, right? And that he had saved his life by telling what he heard was someone was plotting against King Ahasuerus' life to kill him. So they wrote that in the book of Chronicles. And at this time, they found that in there, and he told Haman to come, and he said, "What? Let's look at it." And the king said in verse 4, Esther chapter 6, verse 4, and the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outer court of the king's house to speak unto the king, to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. See, this is what Haman did, evil Haman. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standing in the court. And the king said, let him come. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? What shall be done unto this person that did something great? And so Haman, thinking it was himself, of course, he said, to whom would the king delight to honor more than to myself? That's what he was thinking it to himself. So he just said some lavish things that should happen to this person. Verse 8, what did it say? He says, let the royal apparel be brought which the king uses to wear, and the horse that the king ride upon, and the crown royal, which is set upon his head, and let the apparel and the horse be delivered to the hand of the one the king most noble princes, and that may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaim before him, Salakia, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Okay, so after all of that, they find out it was Haman. Mordecai. Mordecai was the man that the king Ahasuerus chose to have all this royal apparel, and crowned riding on chariot horses through the city. And Haman just nearly probably died within himself that it was not him. Okay? Now, so let's go a little further. So I want to get to the part, of course, what the significance of the Purim is for, which we're getting to it, okay? Now, so we go on a little further. Let's get to pull out some good facts here. And now chapter 7, of course, is the banquet again. All right. Now Haman is setting up himself. Verse 8 says, then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. See that? The ditch you dig for someone, you're going to fall into it yourself. The Most High have a mighty divine way of letting people fall into the ditch that they dig for you. That's why you have to be careful how you live. Don't plot evil against no one, because the Most High knows how to turn it around. All right? Now, verse 9 said, and Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hang Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath purified. So he died. Evil, the Bible say the unjust don't prosper. You know, when people evil, they say evil things, they speak evil things about you. They're mad with their own life because things have not gone their way. So they have an evil heart towards someone. They have nothing good to say. They want you to bow down to them. And when you don't, that's when they, you know, like Haman did, conjure up some type of evil towards Mordecai and trying to influence the king to annihilate all the Jews. But see, the Most High is wise to know who's evil and who's not. He's wise to know who's doing wrong, who's really the person wrong, who's really the person wrong, who's the person that's wrong that is causing the trouble and the problems. Okay? So now we get to chapter 8, because now we see that Haman, he falls at his own prediction. You know, he digged the pit for Mordecai, but fell right in it. Because the Most High knew whose heart was really evil. So you got to watch yourself. And you know, this is a good story also when people are doing you wrong. If someone is really doing you wrong and plotting and scheming and trying to do all they can against you, all it takes is a matter of time. Because the Most High eyes is going through to and fro the earth, beholding the good and the evil. All right. He knows. You can't fool God. We making fool people, but he knows whose heart is evil. Just because Mordecai wouldn't bow down to Haman, just because Mordecai has strength and courage in himself, he wasn't going to bow down to no evil. People want to dominate and control your life with their evil, and when they don't get their way, then they plot against you and say bad things to you and try to overthrow you, slander you, and put a rumor out there so they can annihilate you and destroy you. Not knowing if you're a person that fears the Lord, none of what they say and do can affect you. That the Most High is going to overthrow it and bring it back around, where they're going to fall in and be destroyed themselves in the same